It's your first trip to Egypt, and your new friends there invited you for lunch. The food seems a bit dull, so you decide to spice it up with salt and pepper. You don't see it on the table, so you ask the host for it, and you notice everyone's shocked. It turns out, it's a huge insult to the cook when someone wants to change the original taste of the food on their plate. The cook made it that way for a reason, and wanting to spice it up means showing that the dish wasn't good enough. You're used to doing it as a kind gesture around the world, but don't tip waiters, taxi drivers, or hotel workers in Japan. They can get offended because they already get paid for providing you with good service, and there's no need for extra money to make it any better. If you really want to show appreciation, just say thank you. It's okay to tip private guides, tour companies, and interpreters. You can put any amount that feels right to you in an envelope and hand it down to them. If you want to impress your new Japanese friends or colleagues, take some time to study chopstick etiquette. When you master the art of holding chopsticks, remember not to rub them together. People do it to remove splinters, so it might look like you're unhappy with the quality of the pair that your host provided you with. Don't put your chopsticks vertically in your bowl of rice. This way, it can be seen as an offering to the deceased. Don't wave chopsticks in the air or use them to point at things. Both are considered really rude. The same is with moving things with your chopsticks or the hand holding them. It looks disrespectful, plus you're likely to spill things. When in Italy, don't order a cappuccino after noon. The locals don't do it because they believe the milk and foam turn this drink into a meal, and it's not good for digestion. Also, be prepared to enjoy your coffee standing at the bar and pay for it before you even order it. First, you pay the cash register, then show the receipt to the server to get your drink. Are you a big fan of chewing gum? Well, you'll have an uneasy time in Singapore. Using, selling, and importing chewing gum is banned there, and you'd have to pay up to several thousands of dollars for doing it. This law was introduced in the 1990s to make the city cleaner and keep the local fast trains up to schedule. When they launched a new transit system, passengers stuck gum onto train door sensors, causing some serious delays. With the new rules, this problem was solved. The no gum policy, along with many other strict rules, did help to make Singapore a really clean and fine city. Pun intended. If you absolutely can't imagine your life without chewing, the local authorities recommend replacing the gum with bananas. When someone asks you to pass them something, like salt at the table in Bolivia, don't give it directly to them. Hand it to the person sitting next to them, and they'll pass it for you. If the person next to you is asking for that little favor, you still can't hand it straight to them. The person next to you will have to help. This table etiquette comes from a superstition that handing something to someone directly into their hands brings bad luck. For the same reasons, you can't reach across the table or stand up to pass something or toss it to someone. And don't forget to keep both hands on the table when you aren't eating. It might look like you're trying to hide something if your hands aren't visible at all times. When you arrive for a meal in Jordan, the hosts may give you some bitter Arabic coffee as a warm welcome. Don't try to stretch it for the rest of the evening. The polite thing to do is empty it fast. Only when everyone's done with the drink do people go back to socializing. As you pass the empty cup to the hosts, make sure to jiggle your wrists. If you just pass it without jiggling, it will mean you're asking for a refill. Don't rush to arrive at an event on time in Venezuela. People might think that you're rude or greedy. The polite thing to do is to be 10 to 15 minutes late. Events scheduled for 7 o'clock will often begin at 8 o'clock or later. A popular story goes that in the 1980s, a foreign reporter arrived at a press event more than an hour late. When he saw the room was mostly empty, he went to apologize to the host for missing the event. The host then told him he was the first reporter to arrive. It's quite interesting because the clocks in this country have officially been 0.9 seconds ahead of the rest of the world for years. Are you planning to travel by bus in Ireland anytime soon? Don't forget to thank the driver for the ride on your way out of the bus. You'll hear an overwhelming majority of locals do it loudly, as it's basically not optional. Choose the gift wisely if you've been invited to a home in Vietnam. It's okay to bring fruit, sweets, or incense. Handkerchiefs are believed to be a symbol of a sad farewell, and cutting tools are a sign of cutting relationships, so don't bring those. Wrap your gift in colorful paper and don't opt for black. The locals believe this color to be a bad omen. When you present the gift, hold it with both hands. And don't be surprised if the hosts don't open it right away. It's done after the giver has left. Don't leave anything on your plate in India. It's a sign of disrespect for the food you were served. Food is considered sacred in the country, so it would upset your hosts a lot. So, wash and dry your hands before starting the meal. Don't forget to praise the cook and wait for the eldest to stand up before you leave the table. In South India, it's common to serve food on a banana leaf. You gotta fold it over from the top when you're done with the meal. Folding it from the bottom means you weren't satisfied with what you got. It might be a good conversation starter elsewhere, but don't brag about your achievements in Denmark. The locals believe that everyone is equal, so you won't hear them talk about their successful careers or talents, or how special they are. And they expect the same from you. If you're looking for a good topic, they'll gladly talk to you about the greatness of their country. The Danes are really proud of it and all its wonders. If you're going on a trip to Germany and plan to drive on the famous Autobahn, make sure to tank up before you hit the road. Stopping, parking, making U-turns, and backing up on this super speedy highway is illegal. Yes, even if you have to stop because you've run out of gas, you'll have to pay a fine since you were supposed to plan things better. And although the Autobahn technically doesn't have a speed limit, watch out if you're passing by urban areas like Frankfurt, Berlin, and Munich, or construction works and heavy traffic. There will be special speed instructions for these spots. In case you're planning to explore Cyprus by car, quench your thirst before you start the vehicle. Drinking anything, including water, isn't allowed while driving on the island. So if you can't resist snacking or drinking behind the wheel, prepare to pay a fine. In Ethiopia, you gotta think twice before choosing a gift for someone. They see it as a debt they'll have to repay in the future. So if you bring something really expensive, the receiver will either have to spend a lot of money on a return gift or feel indebted to you.
300,000 people and over 80,000 horses. Yep, that's Iceland. The breed they have there is very specific, hardy, long-lived, and because of it, internationally popular. These horses can be found in North America and Europe too, but they can have certain features people from Iceland don't want their breed to have. Because of that, the Icelanders wanted to avoid mixing their horses with other breeds, so they passed a law over 1,000 years ago that said no horse imports. That's right, even if they give you some of their own horses, you can't take them back. No chewing gum in Singapore. Vandals used to stick their chewing gum on door sensors or would find some other way to mess with public transportation. So the country had to spend around $150,000 annually to clean that. It was easier to ban it by law, so no gum can be bought, sold, or blown into bubbles over there. Not a good idea to import them either. Going to Greece? Good. Have a safe trip. And pick the right shoes. Ever since 2009, no high heels are allowed at the Acropolis. Not that Greeks have anything against stilettos, but they simply wanted to protect their ancient ruins from damage those pointy things can cause. That, and the fact that it's not really practical for such terrain anyway. In the Italian city of Milan, it's illegal to frown in public. Or at least it was a couple of centuries ago. Through difficult historical times, Milan had to create a way to stand out, which is why there was a law requiring people to smile and generally be in a good mood in public places. Germany has highways where you can drive over 100 miles per hour. But if you get crazy with speed and run out of gas while still on a highway, You'll pay a nice fine for that. Are you 1 to 2 miles away from the gas station and want to get there on foot? Better not. That's another fine. Germans make it your responsibility for filling your car, and walking along the highway is not that safe, as is leaving your car on the side of the road. A Winnie the Pooh t-shirt. That brings back some good old memories. Well, memories are sometimes better left at home. Since Winnie doesn't wear pants, Poland decided to ban this character, so you can't have it on your clothes, around schools or playgrounds, no matter what age you are. Just in case you ever wake up and decide it's time to do some hiking in Switzerland without your clothes on, don't. For some unknown reason, some travelers made this type of hiking a thing in Switzerland a couple of years ago. So Swiss officials kindly ask you to keep your clothes on. Greetings from New Zealand. If you want to spend your Sunday afternoon flying with a rooster in a hot air balloon, you might have to find another country to do it, because here, it's illegal. Sorry. Staying in their neighborhood, in 1966, there was a law that prevented you from flying a kite in Australia in a public space if that bothered other people. Luckily, 1966 was a long time ago, so no one will remember this if you decide to have some flying kite fun in a park. Hopefully. While you're there, you can't tie your goat to your vehicle. Also, no dressing as Batman and Robin. You don't want to prove to law enforcement you're not actual vigilantes, right? In some cities, taxi drivers must have a bale of hay in their trunks at all times. At least, they had to until 1980. This law came from the olden days, when horses were still all the rage. And you can't just fill a horse with fuel now, can you? Moving to the United States now. If you're in Washington, don't even think about going after Bigfoot. They passed a law in 1969 where Bigfoot was proclaimed to be an endangered species. So, they didn't say anything about the Yeti though. In Vermont, there used to be a rule prohibiting clotheslines, as some people voted against unsightliness of others' linen and underwear hanging in everyone's view. That's why they made a new regulation. You can't forbid people to put up clotheslines. One rule against another. Yep, that should work. Shh, can you hear that? Someone's talking behind this door. Oh, I wonder what they're saying. Stop right there! At least if you're in Oklahoma. The law says you can't secretly wander around and accidentally overhear someone's conversation and then repeat or publish it later. So if you have anything to share, go tell it to the people of Oklahoma. Your secret is safe there. If you ever take a walk in Nevada and then decide to lay down on the sidewalk and take some rest, think twice, since that's illegal there. Don't sit either. You won't get away with it. Nuances, you know. If you're from Baltimore, Maryland, remember not to bring your lion to the movies. I know the big cat wanted to see it badly, but rules are rules. Also, while you're there, remember a couple of more things you shouldn't violate. No saying bad words in public places. No eating while swimming in the ocean. And no sleeveless shirts in public parks. You shouldn't throw bricks onto a highway in Iowa, unless you get written permission from the city council. Well, when you think about it, it's fair enough. If you don't feel like looking at large shiny billboards all over the city, go to Hawaii, since they banned those in 1920. Well, definitely not the only reason to visit Hawaii, but it's good to know. Meanwhile, other states like Vermont and Maine followed suit and are proud of it. One town in Georgia takes eating fried chicken very seriously. No fork, you eat it with your hands. In fact, in 2009, a woman who celebrated her 91st birthday in a restaurant was eating chicken with a fork when the police came and told her she was under arrest. The lady was later pardoned, but careful how you eat your chicken in Georgia. What else is there to say? Speaking of which, do you know why the chicken crossed the road? Not sure, but what I do know is that these jokes certainly weren't made up in Georgia, since there, it's illegal for a chicken to do just that. You think silly string is fun? Well, a town in Alabama doesn't agree on that, because it says a firm no to keeping, using, storing, selling, manufacturing, or giving away any kind of snap pops, spray string, or similar substances. Yikes. Also, when you're there, don't drive blindfolded. It's been passed as a law, which means they take the phrase, "keep your eyes on the road," quite seriously. Okay, enough is enough. No more sleeping in a bathtub, donkey. Something people in Arizona must say to avoid breaking a law. In the 1920s, local people could see a rancher's donkey in a bathtub carried by a flood. The flood was caused because a local dam broke, and the tub was abandoned in the rancher's backyard. The donkey simply decided to take a nap in it. And you know how it goes. Long day, warm afternoon, post-lunch rest, just couldn't help it. After they managed to save the animal from the sailing tub, the town decided to prohibit donkeys from sleeping in a tub. You know, just in case. In Connecticut, a pickle must bounce in order for it to be considered a pickle. In the 1940s, 2 men were even arrested for selling pickles that weren't legitimate because they didn't bounce. Now, the question is, how exactly does a pickle bounce? More from the Meanwhile in Connecticut episode. It's illegal to cross a street while walking on your hands. Oh man, that's one of the hardest ones not to break. Your best friend is having a birthday. What could you give her? A spa day voucher? Tickets to Disneyland? Dinner at a fancy restaurant? A rat? Well, unfortunately, a rat is out of the legal game if you're in Montana. Well, you've got to respect the law. Luckily, if you're from Florida, rats are a completely fine gift. At least, way better than some bigger animals. Because while you're there, you need to pay parking fees for them. Camels, elephants, horses, and the rest of the animal crew. Sorry guys, you gotta respect the rules.
Now, flying has long become routine for many people. But even frequent flyers sometimes don't know about things you should never do on a plane. Ooh. No bare feet on a plane. It's one of the biggest no-nos of air travel. Even if we omit the topic of unpleasant odors. The airplane floor is extremely filthy. People with contagious foot problems might have been walking the aisles barefoot before you. There's likely to be a lot of dirt left after previous passengers. And don't even get me started on the floor in the lavatories. Ew. If your feet need some freedom, take off your shoes, but at least wear your socks, or bring along a pair of light slippers. Keep in mind that the pressurized air in the passenger cabin is just as dry as it is in the Sahara Desert, with only about 20% humidity. That's why your skin may feel discomfort after a flight. But wouldn't it make more sense to install several humidifiers that could add some moisture? But this extra load would cost airlines lots of money. Plus, the plane's airframe is mostly made of aluminum and other metals, and humid air could lead to corrosion. So, don't forget to bring a moisturizer and use it during the flight. Always secure your tray table as soon as the plane starts moving on the tarmac, and never lower it during the takeoff and landing. It's a security measure, which ensures that you and the other passengers will have a clear pathway in case of an emergency evacuation. Also, keep your seat in an upright position during takeoff and landing. First of all, a reclined seat can seriously slow down an emergency evacuation, since it will block a person sitting behind. What's more, the more backward you're leaning, the harder it is to get into the brace position during an emergency landing. Now try to avoid snoozing during or right after takeoff and landing. For one thing, it's not the best thing for your health. The main problem is that the air pressure inside the cabin changes very quickly during these phases of the flight. This, in turn, affects the air pressure in your ears. It's important to be alert during this time to relax and open up your ears, for example by yawning or swallowing frequency. Chewing gum works for me. If you're sleeping, you can't do this, which can lead to permanent damage. And of course, there's a safety issue. Most accidents happen during takeoff and landing. If you're sleeping during these stages, you might not be alert and conscious enough if an emergency happens. Now, this next recommendation comes from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. According to them, you might want to skip on hot drinks on a plane. The water used to make tea or coffee doesn't come from bottles, it's regular tap water. And water tanks on airplanes are often old and full of bacteria. In 2004, there was a study which found that more than 12% of water samples contained harmful bacteria. But if you still decide to have a cup of hot beverage on a plane, never pour coffee or tea on your own. Flight attendants are trained to handle this task in crowded aisles of a moving airplane and won't accidentally burn you or other passengers. Now, it's probably better if you don't order Coke on a plane. The cabin pressure, so low up in the air, causes a lot of foam. For apparent reasons, flight attendants don't want to serve you a cup filled with froth. That's why they'll fill only half the cup, then wait for the bubbles to settle, and then finish pouring. That can take ages. Keep your air vent open. This way you'll minimize the spread of germs. Planes have high-quality air filters. They'll catch up to 99% of all airborne germs, so you should be safe there. But make sure to wipe that tray table. With 8 times more bacteria than the toilet flush button, it's the dirtiest place on board. Another thing you should avoid is leaning your head on the window if you have a window seat. You never know who occupied your seat before you, and, in any case, the glass is likely to be covered with germs. Say no to backless sandals and high heels on a flight. I do. There are very serious safety reasons for such a request. The first is that both these types of footwear make it very difficult to evacuate the aircraft fast. If you wear high heels, you will anyway have to leave them behind in case the crew is using emergency slides during an evacuation. The heels are very likely to damage the slide, so off they go. Now ask yourself, do you really fancy running away from the airplane barefoot? I'll answer that for you. Nope. Instead, wear sturdy shoes with a solid sole. In this case, you won't find yourself standing on the hot tarmac or in the weeds without any footwear at all. Don't stuff heavy objects into overhead compartments. Your things may not stay inside during severe turbulence, and while falling out, they will injure you and other passengers. Ow! That's why, if it feels difficult to lift something into the overhead compartment, better put it under the seat in front of you or elsewhere. Now, don't blame the pilots for the hard landing. When you experience it in bad weather, it might be intentional. If the runway is covered with water or snow, the plane has to touch down hard in order to break the water layer and prevent aquaplaning. Otherwise, the water can perform the role of a lubricant, and the plane won't be able to brake or respond to any control. Deploying an emergency slide when there's no emergency is a very bad idea. It can cause hour-long delays and cost airlines thousands of dollars to pack the undamaged slide back into its container. Why would someone do it? Apparently, some think it'll help them get off the plane faster. Well, they're an idiot. Don't be one yourself. Just keep in mind that it doesn't work this way. Don't ignore the instructions of the cabin crew to open window shades during takeoff and landing. This way, flight attendants can see what's happening outside, assess the situation, and act fast, organizing the evacuation. For example, if there's a fire outside one exit, they will redirect passengers toward another door. Avoid carrying spray deodorants or shaving cream in your carry-on baggage. Both these things tend to explode mid-flight and therefore aren't allowed on board the airplane. A much better idea is to choose stick deodorants. You also mustn't keep power banks in your checked luggage, and if you want to bring one on board, its capacity shouldn't be more than 20,000 milliamps. Besides, you shouldn't use them during the flight since they might catch fire. In general, lithium batteries are safe to use, but since they're high energy, they can catch fire if they're not treated with care, misused, or if there's a manufacturing fault. Such batteries have been the cause of quite a few fires on board airplanes, as well as during ground handling. Do not worry about airport scanners, they won't harm your health. Otherwise, airport employees wouldn't be able to stay near them without special clothing. Even when you're passing by a baggage scanner, the risk is minimal. And the last one, don't act like a jerk on board. Behave yourself. I know you will. Also, never try to land a plane on your own. Nah, don't laugh, I'm not kidding. In movies, they often show us that something happens to the pilots and they can't land the plane. And that's when the main character, a very skillful person, starts their game. Unfortunately, it's close to impossible to do it in real life, even if a person is a genius, is fond of computer simulators that match the real model of an aircraft 100%, and is ready to follow all the instructions from the ground. They're likely to fail due to one simple aspect: stress. It is true that there have been cases throughout history when amateurs landed smallish private planes after the incapacitation of a pilot. However, there has never been a case of a non-professional pilot landing a commercial passenger airplane. It's only in the movies.
Football, or how others might know it as soccer, is the most popular sport in the world. It's the national sport in many countries around the world and is especially known in Brazil and Argentina. One thing is certain, the rules of the game aren't constant, but change or amend over the years, and some of the rules are just weird or unexpected. For instance, a player can get a yellow card or a red card for committing a foul and anything that the referee considers wrong. But did you know managers and coaching staff can also be handed the infamous cards? Yep, some managers are known for their raunchy antics on the pitch and sometimes go a little overboard. Referees are allowed to book them yellow cards or even red cards if they cross the line. They will usually miss the next game and be confined to the stands above, where the assistant manager will take over. It's even possible to get a red card before a game even starts. If a player decides to act up before the kickoff, the referee can hand them a red card and the team will be forced to start the game with only 10 players fielded on the pitch. A manager has to announce the starting 11 players when the game begins, and if someone is given a red card, then the manager cannot replace the player. They will have to start with one player short. So, you better behave. Given that this rule is permitted, no match proceeds if 7 players are starting the game. Otherwise, the match will be forfeited. This can be because some players were naughty and got the red card, or if there are some injuries or any other reasons. There can be 4 red cards given during a game. Otherwise, the match will have to be stopped if more red cards are shown. So what happens if your goalkeeper gets injured? Well, throw in the backup keeper as a substitute. And what will happen if the sub gets a red card or is injured? There's no other goalkeeper backup in the squad, so any outfield player will have to take the goalie's place. They will have to wear gloves and turn on their saving and diving instincts to keep their team above water. Goalkeepers are only allowed to hold the ball for 6 seconds after saving the ball or recovering it. Any longer than that can result in a booking from the referee, since they might consider it to be time wasting. The goalkeeper is the only player allowed to hold the ball with their hands, but only in the penalty box. If they catch the ball outside, they can be booked or sent out depending on the play. A goalkeeper can't pick up the ball with their hands if a player from their team back passes the ball back to them on foot. If so, then it'll be considered a foul. The goalie must receive the pass and play by foot like the rest of them and pass it or clear it away. However, if the goalie receives a back pass by a header or chest, then they can catch the ball with their hands. This also doesn't mean that you can set up your back pass by kicking the ball in the air and heading it for your keeper to pick up. You can get booked for it. If the goalie releases the ball after catching it or holding it in their hands, then they can't pick it up again. If the goalie is caught doing it, then the referee will award the opposing team a free kick outside the penalty area. Years ago, the penalty box was so much smaller than how we know it now. So back then, the free kicks were so close to the net, and the human wall blocking it was basically blocking the whole thing. It's almost impossible for the ball to get through. A crazy rule in football is if there are no corner flags, then the game cannot proceed. One of the only times this happened was in the 1974 World Cup in a match between Germany and Holland. The officials forgot to put the flags out, so the referee had to delay the game. But the staff added the flags. The game was okay to start. It was only recently that teams can substitute 5 players during a game. For a very long time, teams were only able to switch 3 players during a match. Changing 5 players means excellent squad rotation for any upcoming matches, especially if the team is competing in multiple competitions at the same time. But there was a point in time where no team was allowed to substitute their players even if one of them was injured. Before 1965, if your team had 11 players on the pitch, then don't expect the bench to help you out. I don't think there was a bench to begin with. Getting substituted is annoying, especially if you're on a roll. But if you refuse to be subbed, then actually nothing happens. You would think that the ref will book you or give you some kind of warning, but nope. The game will resume, and the player will be left on the field. While FIFA may not penalize you, your club can fine you and you can lose some of the respect from your team members, the coaching staff, and fans. No rule suggests you must put your first or last name on the back of your jersey. You can put whatever you want, as long as it's not offensive. Footballers tend to put their nicknames they've had since they were young. There's no way you can score a goal directly from a throw-in. That's when the ball is out of bounds, so the players have to restart by throwing the ball back in play with their hands. So, if you're trying to be clever and throw the ball directly into the opposition's net without any of your players touching it, then it will just be a goal kick for their keeper. If you're up for a penalty kick and you're face-to-face with the keep, then you can pass the ball if you want to. This only works if a foul takes place in the game and not during the shootout at the end of some games. You run and before shooting the ball, pass it to your teammate who can score and take all the glory. If a player scores 3 goals in a game, then it's called a hat trick, and that player can take the ball home. If a player scores 2 goals, then it's a brace. You can get booked for taking off your jersey during a celebration or at any point during the game. If a player scores a goal and it's disallowed but the player took off his jersey as a celebration, then he will still get booked. If a ball hits a player's hand or arm inside the penalty box, it's an automatic penalty for the opposition team. No, not necessarily. It depends on the play and where the hand is positioned. If the attacker shoots the ball inside the penalty box and the defender is using his arms to defend himself, then it's not a penalty. However, if the defender stretches out his arms to obstruct the ball's projection, then that would be a penalty. Fouling someone is always tricky. And how does the ref know when to hand out a yellow card or when he just gives a free kick and lets the play continue? Here are some red lines that will surely get you a red card. A slide tackle is a foul. However, if you manage to slide the ball instead of aiming for the legs, then the game can continue. It's an automatic red card if you do a slide tackle with both legs from behind. It's also a red card if you accidentally kick someone dangerously. It's impossible to score an own goal from a free kick. If the player decides to pass back to the keeper and somehow the ball goes inside, then the goal won't be awarded. That's only if the only player who touched the ball is the free kick taker, so hold the celebrations.
If you were to look at Earth from the International Space Station at night, you'd be able to see the lights of the cities from space. That's how big our impact as a species is. There are huge multicultural cities all around the world. We've built buildings so high they nearly disappear out of sight. Cities built from the ground up for thousands and thousands of people to live in. But oh, what's this? What a beautiful monkey! What are you doing there, buddy? You want that banana? Yeah, it looks delicious. Be careful now, don't fall down that tree. Oops. Boy, nature can be so brutal sometimes. I'll bet it didn't wake up thinking it was going to become a lion's breakfast. What? No humans? Where did they all go? Looks like when that monkey fell from the tree, it created a chain of events that led to no humans ever existing on Earth. I know what this is. We must be in an alternate universe. Well, let's skip a few thousand years ahead. What does Earth look like? Humans have altered about 50% or more of the planet's surface. So there aren't going to be any cities or landscape previously shaped by us in this reality. There's not going to be a human touch at all. The Earth now seems to be an animal paradise. They're everywhere. These animals that were previously only found in Africa are now all over different continents. There are lions roaming free in America. Oh, and look, in Europe, there are rhinos, elephants, wolves. Wow, moose. Even bears are here. Since there are no humans taking up most of Earth's space, mammals are now free to be everywhere. Well, you know, different mammals than us. There's a huge diversity of them too. Earth has become what seems to be an expansion of the Africa we know today in terms of animal species. You can see large mammals too. Giant sloths, saber-tooths, and even mastodons are now walking the Earth like in the olden times. The reason why our Earth isn't like this is that humans take up a lot of the available space with their structures. For example, The reason why there's so much animal diversity in Africa in our universe isn't that the continent is just suited for animals to thrive. It's mostly because we haven't been too active in a big part of the continent. Our ancestors had a lot to do with the extinction of large mammals. Ice Age wasn't the only culprit there. On our Earth, humans are the intelligent life form. How about on this planet? As you might know, natural selection is what guides evolution. This, combined with random mutations we can observe in some species, suggests that even without humans on Earth, there's a chance for intelligent life to develop. So, primates are now the dominant life form, or maybe the meerkats evolved into a dominant species. The climate on this Earth is also cooler than ours. That's because there are no greenhouse gases. According to NASA, the current Earth warming trend is likely the result of human activity since the 1950s. This means the increased levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are the reason why our planet warms up. Greenhouse gases are called like this because, just like a greenhouse, they trap the heat. They let sunlight pass through the atmosphere, but the heat it brings doesn't leave our atmosphere because of them. They're a good thing because otherwise life on Earth wouldn't even be possible. But because now they're too abundant, it causes the planet to warm more than it should. Now, let's go back to our alternate Earth. In the water, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is still fully intact. And it's still the largest coral reef system there is, as well as the biggest living organism on the planet, just like ours. This new Earth is also full of trees, and lush ones at that. Greenery everywhere. All sorts of trees exist and are home to all the different animals on the planet. And since there's no deforestation, the planet's lungs, the Amazon rainforest, is able to thrive and is looking more alive and vibrant than ever. But say, what if humans were to show up on this Earth right now? Maybe this year, or the year before? They certainly wouldn't be the dominant species immediately, and would probably struggle at the very beginning. The evolution and learning process would be a slow one until they find themselves at the top. They have to adapt to their new home. This would be like traveling to around 130,000 years ago in our reality, to a place where modern humans, or Homo sapiens, had just shown up. Humans back then weren't new. The only new thing about them was that they evolved into Homo sapiens. It wasn't like we were dropped off from a spaceship onto Earth or anything like that. But in this alternative reality, that's exactly what happened. A bunch of humans were dropped from the sky on Earth. Now, they must learn everything from the ground up. They need to figure out how to survive and thrive in their new environment. They have to hunt for their own food, and they need to take what they can from the planet, much like we did 130,000 years ago. These new humans are nomads. They can't settle in one exact place because they need to explore and understand their surroundings, just like the animals that surround them. As their groups become larger, they split into smaller ones to find new places suited to build their homes, or even a place where survival might be easier. Since it's been a while that they've arrived on this new Earth, they've done some exploring and found themselves more comfortable in their new setting. Their tools are better developed, and home-like structures, like huts, finally start appearing. 50,000 years ago, we developed our language. These humans also developed their own because they need to communicate better with each other. With language, they become more and more organized and are able to make better plans for their future. All dogs come from wolves, and there are two theories of how it might have happened that wild beasts became humans' best friends. One theory says early humans somehow ended up capturing wolf pups and kept them as pets, and over time they would gradually domesticate wolves. Another theory states that wolves actually domesticated themselves. It's called survival of the friendliest. Because both wolves and humans were hunters, wolves probably also figured out they would have benefits if they stuck around humans instead of competing directly with them. Some wolves were fearful and aggressive toward humans. Others might have been friendlier, which also likely gave them access to the hunter's food supplies. As time passes, modern human behavior starts showing up. Fixed homes begin to appear in places that benefit people, maybe next to a river or places where the soil is fertile. This way, they're also able to become farmers and develop agriculture. As they settle down, communities start arising too. Since they are very social beings, it's only natural they're drawn to one another. Soon humans are all over the planet, spread around the continents, with communities and families of their own, and don't forget the pets. The planet's landscape shifts like it did in our reality, to accommodate the needs of humans. Cultures are developed, rivalry begins, they start pushing each other to great lengths. Thousands and thousands more years go by, and this human society starts to look a lot like the one we have today. Still, things might have happened a different way. There might have already been an intelligent species they would have had to compete with, and then their progress would probably have staggered a bit. Maybe a society could emerge where different intelligent life forms would be able to peacefully coexist. When you enter a coffee shop, a meerkat might be your barista. Your landlords could be a couple of gorilla siblings. Or when you go to a barber shop, a primate that's only wearing a barber jacket would be the one to cut your hair. If not, it's likely things would end up the same as our reality. Humans would not be the most numerous species on Earth, but they would certainly still be the most impactful one.